I think so, Mike. When you're ready, take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Michael Hoppy. Some of you may know me from GeoPogo. I'm with the Design Tech Committee for the AIA, and we have a very exciting presentation for you today. Of course, we have three presenters. We have Thomas Simmons. He's with ARCHVISTA, and so he'll be doing a presentation on your design technology toolkit. And then we have Sam Anderson, and she is from Epic Games. We're very excited for this presentation. She's going to be talking about Twinmotion and all the incredible things that you can do with your architectural design files in the Twinmotion platform. And we have Matt Maneval. And Matt, if I got your name correct, if I didn't, sorry. He's a licensed architect with Walter Warner Architects. And so I've seen some of Matt's work. It looks incredible. The AIA has posted it before. And let's get started, everybody. So a little bit of housekeeping. Keep your microphones turned off. When you have questions, you can turn your camera and microphone on. We like to have an open conversation and discussion, so feel free to ask questions in the chat or use your microphone to ask questions. And let's have some fun. I think this is going to be incredible, and I'm excited to see what everybody has for today. So Thomas, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate the introduction.
Yes.
All right. So let's see. I'll go ahead and get started. So yeah, my name is Tom Simmons, and I'm going to kind of take you through a little bit of a review here about your kind of technology toolkit for design as a starting point. I'm sure that this is a slide that many of you might recognize a lot of the programs in here that you use. You know, there's a lot of tools that are available when it comes to design technology for architecture and design firms. Of course, you know, not everybody uses all these technologies, but I'm sure you use many of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of concentrate on 5 components to sort of the presentation today. You know, first, we're going to talk about concept modeling, BIM CAD modeling and documentation kind of tied together. We'll review a little bit about project review, visualization, and then presentation. And then what I really want to concentrate on today are kind of 4 components, because we can't obviously talk about every solution out there. But what we really want to talk about is how to help you better, you know, be more productive in that early design phase with concept modeling, and then moving that information into your next phase of DD and construction documents where you're using a BIM program, whether that's Revit, Archicad, or whatever. But what we often see, I work with a lot of clients up and down the coast, and what I see a lot in my consulting work is that a lot of firms tend to develop their models in a program like SketchUp, for example, and then have to rebuild that model for whatever they're going to use in the next phase in BIM or in Revit or in Vectorworks or whatever they're using next. And so what we're seeing a lot is that firms are actually using Archicad right from the beginning of projects all the way through. And then they move that into also using a hyperlinked 2D, 3D platform called BIMx for design review. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of an overview of that. And then we'll let Sam talk to you about Twinmotion. And then Matt will wrap it up with a project that kind of encapsulates these 3 programs and also Kula at the end. But I also just want to talk a little bit about what we're sensing in the market right now. This is an article that came out in PC magazine not too long ago, and just talked about how small business owners are really challenged and overwhelmed by technology. And you know, I think that's something that we're really sensing, and something we're trying to address, and kind of the focus on kind of a suite of programs that do more with less. And a good example is with one of our clients, Fuse Architecture. They, you know, were using, you know, a combination of products, AutoCAD, Revit, SketchUp, 3ds Max, Lumion, and they were kind of doing the same thing, kind of a little bit overwhelmed. And they started to look at trying to trim down and focus on maybe just, you know, 2 programs, in this case, Archicad, Twinmotion. And they were able to do that and actually build a much more efficient process from design, early design, all the way through to documentation. And they reduced a lot of the touch-ups and so forth they used to do Photoshop using Twinmotion. So if you don't know Archicad, Archicad is a BIM solution. It's primarily focused on architectural design. And it provides everything from concept modeling up front to presentations, visualization, energy simulation, documentation, model checking, and a lot more. I'll talk about a few parts of it today. Obviously, we only have a little short time to kind of talk about that. And then I'll get into BIMx, and then I'll pass it off to Sam. So when we talk about early design, and we talk about this idea of using a BIM tool for concept modeling, a lot of people are like, can I really use that in design? And the answer is yes. And I think that if, one of the things I show people and talk to people a lot is that, in Archicad, we have something called the Morph Tool. It works very similar to SketchUp. And it allows you to do these kinds of push-pull type processes you would typically do in a SketchUp workflow, be able to, create different shapes and reshape shapes, and be able to, in essence, be able to start developing a design from a mass modeling perspective, and then start to add detail with that, which I'll talk about in just a second. But it's this idea that by having something like this kind of push-pull type technology within the BIM environment means you can combine a combination of the sort of workflow of a SketchUp environment with the BIM tools, and it really adds a lot of power and also increases their productivity. One of the things that I think is also important to note, because I used to use SketchUp myself, the follow me command is a hugely powerful part to the program. And in Archicad, we can do something very similar. You draw a 2D shape, you take that shape, and then you extrude it. And you can extrude it along any shape. So, like for example, a railing or some sort of edge condition along this wall. That can easily, very quickly add that level of detail, whether this is in early schematics or whether it's latter in the process of construction documents. Can be used in both areas because you're combining both the BIM tools with the SketchUp workflow. And this is a really powerful process because, again, it gives you that ability and that flexibility to do what you've done in SketchUp within the BIM environment. But I also like to point out something that I like to term hybrid BIM workflow. And I think this is really important because a lot of people come from a background using 2D drafting to create details, to create their documentation, and they combine that with, and then when we get into BIM, they think that everything has to be modeled to the level of detail, and that's just not the case. The fact is that you can actually do a lot of work with 2D type workflows here. It's a good example where you've got a beam that's been drawn with something that's no more than just a fill pattern. And then that pattern can be extruded to create the shapes that you're seeing on the ceiling, or in this case, update it to then update the design behind that. And this is what I try to emphasize to people is that it really does bring together these two environments in a way that makes it much faster, much easier, much quicker to create design details. And it's also really important that we have rich graphics, visual graphics for documentation. If you're talking about design and that early part of our workflow in schematics, you want to be able to output not only 3D views like this, but also 2D views with the same level of textures and graphics. And that's something that Graphisoft actually just recently enabled in Archicad, has added a huge ability to do very similar type operations that we do in SketchUp. And that is that I can go in, I can create a view with textures, with fills, with shades, with sun shadows, and have it look very similar to what we would see within that SketchUp environment. So, having created a simple section like this, which then adds that documentation, elevation, we can then open that up and very quickly have those visual graphics, that's richness, and then combine that with the documentation of notes, et cetera, that we add on top of that. And then being able to leverage this model for documentation. A good example is, or for 3D documentation, I should say. A good example is this island in the kitchen, right? This is great, but we want to turn that into a 3D document, similar to what we might do in SketchUp again, where we can create a view. That view is something we could then add notes and dimensions and annotation and other line work on top of it to begin to embellish this further. And I think that's really important because oftentimes as we go through the process of our documentation, we want to be able to embellish this information and be able to do that within a documentation environment. Okay, a quick little overview of Archicad there from a design focus. Let me talk a little bit about BIMx. BIMx is a desktop, mobile, and web app. The majority of our clients use it on iPads and Google devices, and it is incredibly powerful. It integrates something we call hypermodel technology, which basically integrates drawings and a 3D model. We kind of talk about what that does. So if you have your iPad, for example, or Android device, you can basically take your models with you. I'm sure many of you do on some devices. But what it allows you to do, which you would expect, is to be able to have these models available to you with your documentation, your models integrated together. We go into the model, and now we're able to move around this in a very rich way, very rich graphics. Be able to click on information to find out more details about it, be able to measure, but also most importantly, be able to communicate this to our clients in a very visually enriched way. And also the clients can go through this because it's so easy to navigate and walk through that you can send them a link and they're able to walk through this and view it themselves. But the other important part to this is being able to understand the connection between 2D and 3D. I'm not sure about you, but I've worked with a lot of clients before in the architecture world, and they don't understand 2D plans and elevations and sections a lot of time. Here we can click a button and immediately have that 3D model just extract and extrude right out of those drawings. And this really has helped a lot of our clients overcome those issues that they have with their clients not understanding the 2D workflow and the 2D plans, et cetera. And certainly something that's become a powerful part of using BIMx. And finally, is being able to review drawings and details of hyperlinks. So what that means is that if I've got a drawing set like this, and I have sent this to my builder in the field or a client for that matter, and they're scrolling through it, or they click one of the section symbols, they can immediately view this drawing right in relationship to the actual 3D model behind it. And this has helped inform clients in the field, the builders in the field in particular, because oftentimes, as you know, they don't understand drawings. They can't figure out how things to go together. And if you have this ability to have the model and the drawings associated with each other, it eliminates a lot of issues in the field and helps to communicate design intent better. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Sam.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very happy to be here. So let me share my screen and I can talk about Twinmotion. And if you are unfamiliar with Twinmotion, understandable, it's a part of the Epic Games family. So Epic Games has games such as Fortnite, and the gaming engine used to create that is called Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine allows people to use real-time rendering for video games, automotive, architecture, film. There's quite a large range of different industries that are using Unreal Engine, and they acquired Twinmotion a few years ago and have been putting some of the technology from Unreal into Twinmotion. And so if you are unfamiliar with the term real-time rendering or don't quite understand it, I get it. It's kind of difficult to explain, but it is the use of your GPU for rendering. So what you see on your screen, what your GPU is producing on your screen is what you're going to get for the output. So that means if you're used to rendering with your CPU, you would have your model up there and then hit render, and then that's when you would get your render. So the real-time rendering is going to give you that immediate visual fidelity right on your screen, so it speeds up design workflows a little bit. And Twinmotion is one of the softwares that allows you to do this. And with Twinmotion, we are looking at having it be an intuitive solution for real-time rendering. And so that means that you can take your Archicad model, bring it into Twinmotion, and quickly and easily create an environment. Paint trees, you can switch through weathers and seasons. We have some smart assets that grow and change over time. So we're trying to see how we can create this and have it be accessible to our creators and users out there. And so one of the things that goes along with that is the interoperability of it all. So we want to have any creator, no matter what modeling software you use, that you can bring it into Twinmotion. So currently we have technology called Datasmith. So this is used in Unreal, and what it is a file export or plugin that's going to allow you to bring in your model with all of its materials and lights into Unreal. And we are currently getting this technology and applying it to Twinmotion as well. So if you have used Twinmotion in the past with Archicad, you might have used the direct link, which provides a synchronization. And I'm happy to announce that we are coming out with the Datasmith plugin very, very soon, like imminently. It's coming out very, very quickly. So if you have Archicad 25, it is going to allow you to bring in multiple Archicad models, and you'll be able to synchronize them. So this is a little bit of a demo. We have this already for Rhino and Revit. So this is the Rhino interface here, but you'll see that when you make changes to the model, it's also going to be made in Twinmotion. And we have some tools for our output, which I think could be very helpful for designers. We have a phasing tool, which you could use to create a construction timeline, as well as design options. We have the presenter, which I believe Matt is going to showcase a little bit later and talk about. We have the standalone immersive experience. So you could package your model, send that to your client, and they could open it up on their computer and walk around. We also have VR and still images, 360. We have 360 animations as well. So if you're creating a video, the client or a partner could pan around in the video, which can sometimes be fun. And then we also have Twinmotion Cloud. So this is going to be useful for your client or a partner who doesn't have a very powerful computer. What they'll be able to do is, if you have your Twinmotion model, you'll see that there's the push for cloud button at the top, and you can do that, and it's going to put it on the Twinmotion cloud, and you'll be able to send that to your partner, colleagues, and you'll be able to curate what animations and videos you would like to have there, and you'll be able to have people walk around, change the daylight. So we are putting a lot of effort into this and going to be improving as we go. So be on the lookout for updates here as well. And speaking about interoperability, we do want to make sure that this is an open-ended tool, that you're not going to build everything out in Twinmotion and then it's just going to not go anywhere from there. So the Datasmith technology also works for Twinmotion going into Unreal, meaning you can have multiple Twinmotion files that go into Unreal and you can take your projects further. So this might be useful if you are at an architecture firm where you have a rendering team, or if you have someone that's interested in Unreal, you'd be able to pass off your Twinmotion file to them and they can take it from there. The difference with Unreal is it's a little more complex, but it means that you're going to be able to create any output that you want. So you could do augmented reality, you could do the next level of immersive design within virtual reality. There's also a higher quality in visuals, so you can do some path tracing, so that's going to be a little bit more like your V-Ray renderings. What's great is that technology is going to go down into Twinmotion soon, so it's going to be fun to have that quality in Twinmotion as well. And so that kind of goes back to the whole idea of the Epic ecosystem. And so Epic, we are trying to make designing in 3D very accessible to everyone. So we've acquired a lot of companies recently that are going to aid you as designers. So we have the Quixel Megascans, which is where they go and 3D scan the environment in a bunch of different places in the world, and they're bringing those models into the Quixel Megascan family, which is a part of Epic. So that's going to be thousands of 3D models, such as plants, building facades. There's materials as well. It's going to really heighten the visual quality, and it is going to continuously be updated. So there's always going to be new Quixel assets coming into Twinmotion. We also have recently acquired Sketchfab and Capture in Reality, which is going to allow you to take your phone and take a photo around you and then bring in that model to create a 3D model. We also have ArtStation, which is great for inspiration, and 3D Lateral, which is the team behind MetaHuman. So 3D humans, and if you aren't familiar with it, I definitely encourage you to check it out. It's some pretty wild and impressive stuff. But that's all to say that we are bringing all of that technology into Twinmotion. So these are the Quixel assets that are now available. So you have thousands of these in your library. This one particular is showing construction. Like I said, there's a lot of environmental building ones, but we are continuing to update this. And you can see how you can just drag, drop, place, and then there it is. So we are looking forward to continuing to build out Twinmotion and But I think one of the important things is really understanding real world application for Twinmotion. And so I am gonna go ahead and pass it off to Matt. So I'll go ahead and let Matt take the reins here.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Always fun to hear about what's coming next. Makes us excited. So I'll go ahead and share here. And yeah, like Michael said, my name's Matt. I'm a licensed architect and member of Walker Warner Architects BIM team. I'm also a job captain here. And today we're going to be taking you through a little bit of a case study of one of my previous projects and just showing you how technology helps us present our design through the whole design process at different phases and at different levels of quality. A little bit of background on Walker Warner. We're founded in 1989 by Brooks Walker and Greg Warner. We specialize in custom private residential as well as estate design, as well as dabbling in a few wineries, commercial offices, and recreation clubs. And there's a really variable size of scope in these projects, which we'll come back to when we talk about the kinds of software that we use. We've been using Archicad for over a decade. I think we started in 2009, and we've been using Twinmotion since 2018, which is when I joined the firm. Jumping smack into it, often for the first or so design presentation meetings, we really like to keep things sketchy. This here is a sketch from one of our principles where we do all of our site analysis, our program studies, visioning imagery, and these sorts of illustrative sketches. And we purposefully limit these early presentations, what we present, just to sketch form to give the appropriate representation that the design is still malleable. It's not full baked into a 3D model that we've already thought about. So even though we're only presenting sketch usually at first, we almost always will have a 3D model in production behind the scenes that we've already been using to inform the kinds of design and sketches that we're presenting here. And of course, we're always going to be starting in Archicad. Even before we start talking about the building design and any iterations there, we're modeling topo information from the survey. We're using government satellite survey databases to get the features of any adjacent neighbors, as well as any distant views that we want to capture in the model. And just like Tom said, when we really start the first pre-design study of massing and form, this is all in Archicad, which I think is really special. I've worked at firms where, just like Tom said, you have two different models and you start in SketchUp, and then we would take that into Revit, and then design changes come along in Revit while you're doing your construction documents. You have to come back and catch up all those changes on your SketchUp rendering and design model. And Archicad has been really great for that in the sense that you can see we start really basic in design with the exact kind of volumes and forms, and really just looking at the overall form of the building before we actually start to articulate it. But with all this in one program, the same morph push-pull modeling that we do eventually gets converted into walls and roofs. And these are smart BIM wall and roof elements that will eventually be the same elements that are documented in our construction document set. So as we get through the initial amount of massing and pre-design studies, eventually we'll start to formalize one or two options or so that eventually become articulated architecture. So at this kind of, we would call this maybe early schematic design, where again, we're showing the Archicad model with a little bit of purposeful restraint in how we're depicting it. For the materials and graphics of this, we purposefully keep them to line work, very simple colors, so that way we can when we're presenting to the client, it's not distracting if there's an ultra realistic concrete texture that they just don't like. We keep it toned down at first. Archicad is really great for this, whether it's doing a fly round in the live model, if you're exporting a BIMx that you can send to the client after, or even just taking screenshots is often the simplest and best way to showcase some of these ideas. So in here, you can see the product of those iterations we were studying before now dropped into our topo site model, enhanced with a little bit of graphic textures just to delineate, what's wood, what's concrete, what's metal, and help us really sell the core elements of the design before we get into the nitty gritty. And next up, after we've made it through the early design process and are continuing to refine design, the same Archicad model is still helpful all the way along, but not just for design studies, but also for, of course, generating our construction documents, our detailing, all that good stuff. We're using Archicad for construction coordination exhibits. We're using it for our permit and HOA submittal packages, and of course, still client presentation exhibits in the end. So both the images you can see on the right, the bottom right one is a site plan that again was generated all in Archicad. There's no touch up there. And on the top right is another Archicad rendering, which has gotten a little bit of color tweaking in Illustrator, but again, it's really great. We're not having to drag these through 8 different programs to get a final quality render. And especially if you have to make a change and drag it through SketchUp into Rhino into V-Ray, workflows like that are thankfully for me now getting to be a little bit a thing of the past. Yeah, so this is, Archicad is a really powerful tool, but for a second, we're going to take a back step and go way back out to starting the project and talk about how we're using Twinmotion. So just like I said in the beginning, we're still only presenting sketches. We've got an ArchCAD model we're working on. We also start using Twinmotion very early on. Now, of course, this is really helpful for us studying and become accustomed to the site, learning where the proper views are, doing sun studies, analyzing what kind of plantings currently exist, and coordinating with our landscape architects to imagine what kind in the future. However, starting this model early when we're in pre-design guarantees, that when the building is designed and developed enough that we want to show it in Twinmotion, you're not starting from scratch. We've got this model that we've been maintaining the whole way along. And even though the client has never seen it, we're using it for our own in-house design studies. And it's been a really helpful tool for us to do that. So after we get through possibly the end of schematic design or so, then this is where Twinmotion really starts to sing, and we have a developed and articulated Archicad BIM model. It's not a separate SketchUp model like we've talked about, and it's that BIM Archicad model that is directly uploaded into Twinmotion and fleshed out with realistic textures, lighting, plantings, camera work, everything you need to raise the quality of your rendering significantly. And one great thing about Twinmotion is, I've worked at other firms where for our renders, you kind of architects have to become mini exports in all these strange kinds of softwares, learning just exactly enough how to get what you need out of Cinema 4D to get a quality render while still trying to do your day job is something that I always struggled with. And Twinmotion is so intuitive. It's simple for architects to pick up that, often after a day or so of training, people are ready to jump in and really put it to the test. And of course, the best application of how we're using Twinmotion is for client design presentations. And oftentimes we'll be using that by flying around a live model. If it's something we're going to print out or send for follow-up, we'll of course also have supporting still renders, video animations, and recently we've even been doing VR experiences either in our office or on site. So again, a really multi-purpose tool. And the thing that you're developing is I'm not working on this one render, for a week. I'm working on the whole model. And it's that model that gives you the opportunities for creating almost instantly any of the new shots that you can imagine. And even after the main schematic design has been signed off with, and the majority of client design presentations are over, and now you're just trying to hunker down and finish the rest of the design and documentation process for the building. At Walker Warner, we still use Twinmotion all the way through a construction administration and even afterwards for marketing. Something that we do here is a lot of Twinmotion and Archicad hybrid line work and rendered graphics, which again bring a new level of understanding to these sorts of interior design studies. Perhaps that'll be coordinated with our interior designer or even sent along to the contractor as a construction sketch or cost proposal exhibit that really helps the client, just like Tom was saying, translating a 2D drawing to a real life 3D experience is so difficult, and Twinmotion and Archicad together help us bridge that gap. On the bottom right, you also see how we, again, use Twinmotion Archicad in tandem to create these simplified visualization graphics for sustainability diagrams, award symbols, whatever you need. And one other way that we use Twinmotion that Tom has talked about is with a website called Kula, which basically creates a cloud-based panorama model that anyone with the link can access. And It's really helpful, especially if your client doesn't happen to have a supercomputer that can run the model, like most clients don't. I'll show you guys a quick glimpse at how we use this Coola tool to access our 3D model anywhere. So here you can see the Coola link that we're looking at, and oftentimes we'll start off with a site plan, but whether this is on a web interface or even on your phone when you're on site, it's full of these interactive dots, which you can click through. And once you take the time to go through and export your portions, this is a fully interactive cloud-based panorama program that you can send to your client. You can send it to consultants to assist with coordination. We send it to contractors just for initial pricing to really help them, even not just for clients, but for anyone, bridge the gap between our 2D set of documents and what we're hoping to have the building really be experienced as. So we've really loved using this tool, especially for on-site VR, where we'll go out to the actual site in person. We'll have the client say, perhaps stand right in the middle of their living room and where it would be in real life. And we'll hand them either a Oculus Quest or even just a phone with this link open with VR mode turned on. And it's a really simple way of making soft VR accessible to everyone, also making your model accessible to everyone. You don't have to bring a GPU to every meeting. You can send them this link. And of course, like Sam said, there's great advancements in the Twinmotion presenter tool, which creates a portable version of your model, but also via Presenter Cloud, which is kind of taking the ideas here and adding it one step level to be fully controllable. For now, we've been using Twinmotion just for all of those instances that I mentioned, and we found it to be a really great tool that, along with Archicad, helps us present our designs, lets us be architects and not software gurus, and really helps us produce some of our best work. So with that, I'll end our case study. And I think now we'll have all of our presenters back, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone in the audience may have.
Yeah, that is perfect and phenomenal use case. Thank you for that, sharing that project, Matthew.
Of course.
Yeah, that is just perfect. So anybody's free to either put your questions in the comment section, or you can turn on your microphones and ask questions. I think we saw some incredible stuff here today between, what Thomas has shared. Sam, I have followed Twinmotion for a very long time. And back when I started, I think we're all roughly the same age. So we had Revit. We all started with Revit, Archicad, but the colleges touched us on Revit. And Lumion was the first one, I think, to come out and kind of hit the races. And then you saw Enscape. And then when you guys bought Twinmotion, we all looked at that and said, Epic Games is going to pump this up with some great features.
Yeah, I think I can happily say I had a similar experience. Before Epic Games, I was at Shop Architects, so I was doing a lot of playing around with a lot of the different visualization tools there. And I think I, exactly like you said, kind of followed the direction and route of kind of all these softwares coming into the world. And I remember I was at an event where they spoke about it, and it like blew my mind to see some of the stuff that it had been doing. So I'm excited to be kind of on the other side of that now and to see it continuing to grow. But yeah, I mean, even the stuff that Matt was showing, it's just, I mean, you guys use it in such a wonderful way. And so it's fun for me to kind of see how all of these designers and architects are using it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We got our first question from Jackie. It's for you, Sam, if you want to have a read. And take a look and yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so this is a good question. So this is asking, are materials always set in Archicad or in Twinmotion, or a mix of both? So there's a few different ways that you can bring in your model. So one of the ways that you can bring in your model is with an FBX. You can also bring it in with the Datasmith direct link, which is what I was referring to. So that is going to save your materials in there. So you'll be able to bring them in as is, and it's going to translate your materials to PBR materials, which is physically based rendering materials. So it's gonna do, that's what the Datasmith file format and plugin does. It's translating all of those JPEGs and butmaps that you have into Twinmotion accessible files and materials. But there's also a huge library of materials that you can do in Twinmotion. But Matt, it would be good to know what is, do you do more of the Twinmotion materials, or is it more from your source model?
It always depends on what you need out of the project. My preferred way is kind of the simple material textures that I showed earlier in the presentation. Maybe I'll actually go to it. Those are the Archicad materials, at least initially. And the Twinmotion materials are always linked to what you have in Archicad. So if you have 8-inch horizontal wood siding in Archicad, that'll come into Twinmotion as this brown JPEG with lines, and you can grab an associated PBR realistic texture either from Twinmotion's base library through a Quixel plugin, which is actually what I did for these guys. And so you'll have two different sets of materials, and you can certainly make them match up. But usually I find, keeping the Archicad materials a little bit simpler and toned down just helps the file perform better, but also kind of lets you control how much you want to share. Perhaps if you're sharing something with a HOA group and you don't want to give them the full suite of lifelike materials, you limit that to perhaps just the Archicad graphic presentations. And that's not to say you can't enhance the textures in Archicad. That's just how I prefer to use it. There are certainly people that match up these realistic textures in Archicad. So their Archicad model is almost as beautiful as what you get in Twinmotion, just without the extra lighting and rendering. And
yeah, I see that there are also some questions about landscape, as well as some of the libraries that I mentioned, the Quixel. So I'm actually, Matt, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. I do have a model here. That
is it Cesium? Has Twinmotion integrated with Cesium?
So you have to use Unreal for that. So that's one of those ways in which you would bring the Twinmotion model into Unreal, and then you can use the plugin there. But once again, everything kind of starts in Unreal, and then that technology goes into Twinmotion.
That's right.
So it's good to hear that you are interested in that. And there's even a product board that I can probably share with the group here, so that if you have requests like that, or just interested in what's coming in Twinmotion's way, I'll share that in a moment. But first, let me share my screen here. And I'm going to bring up, this is just a demo model that I have here, but someone had asked about the landscape here. So in the left-hand side, this is the library that contains everything. And so I'll first show the landscape. So that's going to be in this vegetation landscape. And then under landscape here, there's this rocky grasslands. And when you bring it in, it's going to bring in that terrain, and then it's going to allow you to paint. So you'll be able to paint and sculpt and pull that out. So you'll see that it already comes with some of that in here, and then we can sculpt the terrain here. So I have these kind of options of the brush that I want to paint with, and you can control the size of the brush. And then you're able to push and pull everything here. So you'll see that I have, if I increase the intensity and the diameter here, I can start to paint in and create the landscapes this way. And as far as the library that contains the Quixel assets, it is confusing because it's not under the objects or the materials, but it actually has its own icon here. So when you click here, you'll have the 3D assets, and you'll see that, let me go to props. We have some books in here, some firewood. Let's do recreational.
I like the historical cowboy section.
There's
Quixel. There's fun stuff.
There's some really fun stuff to go through here. So if you're using Twinmotion and have not been using these assets, I would encourage you to do so. There's just some really impressive stuff here. And there's also materials as well. So if I go to surface here, let's maybe go to, let's do concrete. So you'll see that there's you have several different options here. And so there's going to be a caveat with this, or not necessarily a caveat, but you'll notice that there are these buttons right here, and it says, please sign in to download. If you go up to the top and go to File, Sign into Epic Games, I've already signed in, so it has my information here, but you use the email and sign in information that you use to get Twinmotion. It's all the same, it's all the Epic Games account. and you'll hit OK. And so then you can download that asset. And then once it's downloaded, you can drag and drop it in. And once you download it, you don't have to do this every single time. But so if I were to bring this in, oops, I'm pulling the wrong one. So here, drag it in, it's doing this creation. It doesn't take this long every single time. Like I said, it's just the very first one that you do. And then you can go in and you can control some of the elements here. So there's, you have controlled a lot of these. You could even replace some of the button maps if you wanted to, like say you have a button map that you really love to use. You have some different options here. So I will stop my screen share and see. Hopefully that answered your question there. Oh, I can show. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say too, for everybody that wants to get real landscaping in, OSM data. Just Google that, and there's the Datasmith with Blender, and you can literally rip real world. Not only cities, but you can also take the data, and if you can export that as an OBJ or an FBX, you can probably get it into Twinmotion, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good tip as well. So
yeah, maybe take one step back. I think we had one question from Giselle asking about landscape, and I'm going to assume you're asking if it's always set in Archicad or in Twinmotion or both. And usually I think historically, if we had 3D trees and bushes in Archicad, they'd look great and they'd blow up our file. And we love nowadays, we'll still have the planting in both Archicad and Twinmotion that are linked together, and it's the same scheme. But often, again, in Archicad, we'll use plants, objects that are perhaps made to be a 2D symbol with that kind of customizability, have a simple 3D model, but in Twinmotion, we'll have a corresponding tree that replaces that one in the model. And then once you've used your Archicad tree to set the location, perhaps you turn off that layer in Twinmotion. So now they're both matched up and syncing, but you're only showing one at a time. But usually you do have two sets of trees that you're working with, one for your visualization model and one for your BIM model.
And Matt, let me add to that. If you are working in Archicad and you're looking for realistic trees that don't blow up your model, there is a website called ArchiRadar, and they have come out with some amazing trees. I've got a number of clients that are using those now, and they're built to be efficient trees, but they look realistic, and so and they're 3D. So if you're looking for something in Archicad, that would be a good resource to go to.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's perfect. And I'll say, Matt, I love that you'd bring clients on site and utilize VR for filming it. And there's so many new technologies to do that. And I definitely recommend you check out AR for doing that with clients, because I always say 3D will never replace the beauty of the real site, never. So if you just digitally project the building itself into the context of the site, it's just incredible. And in my own work, I find that AR may come to replace renditions altogether. Because if you get that building looking good, then the site is as good as it's ever going to be.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're working on. And I guess my take is that the AR is still kind of coming along, and we're eagerly following to find good solutions that help us make it as easy as Twinmotion makes this other stuff.
Oh yeah, and throughout our careers, we will see some great stuff. Yeah, what we saw in the last 10 years and the next 5 years is going to be incredible.
We're going to look back in 10 years and laugh at what we were showing here.
Absolutely.
It's all abstract. That's what I always say. We're artists at the end of the day, and it's just abstract thought. So that's it. Yeah, symbols and whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah, and especially with the augmented reality, because right now everything does need to be low poly just because of the nature of the mobile nature of the technology. But I do think that is going to improve as the technology improves, like seeing a little bit more high poly information going into augmented reality, which is just going to be amazing.
That's right. I am curious for Twinmotion. Is there an opportunity, you think, in the future where you can bake models?
Interesting. So you mean for lighting, bake models? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So we are working more towards going through the ray tracing element as opposed to light baking. So for everyone's knowledge, light baking is referring to some of the light calculations that are done in the game engines in Unity and Unreal. You bake your lighting so that you have accurate lighting and shadows. And it's going to make the end product a little bit cheaper in computation because it's all kind of baked in, as the word would refer to. But I think that's always going to be there. I'm not sure if it will come into Twinmotion, possibly, but I do think things are moving more towards the ray tracing and path tracing realm. So it's going to be more about getting the real-time rendering effect with the way that the camera calculates light and global illumination. And so those are all improving. So you're going to get more accurate shadows using ray tracing. It's probably not as accurate as baking your lighting, but yeah, it'll be interesting though to see how those two paths for creating lighting in these softwares will continue.
There was a question for Matt. Matt, can you describe your process for how you exported the 360s from Twinmotion into the 360 web viewer?
Yeah, the 360 panos are actually built into Twinmotion as a export option, and I can go ahead and share here. So you can choose your set points that you're going to export the views from, and you send that pano to export, and you get a really funny still JPEG that kind of looks like you're inside a crystal ball, and it's all warped, but it gives you a simple JPEG that then is just uploaded to whatever. Kula is the one that we use, but there are plenty of online web viewer programs that'll let you upload a 360 panorama image. But yeah, from then it's just a simple process of uploading all of your sets of images, linking them all together. So unfortunately, you're still manually adding all of these points to say, this is where we go into the kitchen here. But once you have that and the model set up, you've got 80% of the work done. And then every time your design updates, you'll just come through and relink those same spots, add a few new ones. And as you update the model, the 360 panel will always be available on the cloud, whether you're on site on your phone or just working on it at home. Yeah.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, and the lightweight nature of the web links is just fantastic because you can send them email, text message, and you don't need LTE to open it, so it's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes for our remote sites where there's barely any cell service, I got a little nervous about loading the 360 panos, but they keep it light, and even they somehow make it work. So cool to see. One question I also saw was about how we obtain the topography information. So that's a great question, and it's a relatively complicated process. There's a couple different options. You can always go through the US government survey database, and I'll share just what that interface looks like right now. So anywhere in the continental US, there is an online database that's available for anyone to use. That you can type in your project address and it'll give you a height map, which you can then, what we do is we'll take it into a program called QGIS, which analyzes that and turns that into contour lines. However, in Twinmotion, you can also just directly import height maps to do the same kind of landscape sculpting that I believe Sam was talking about. And I think that'll work for some situations where you have a lot of site up close, but if you wanted to say, get distant mountains way in the back there, then sometimes you're taking the height map data from the US government survey, transitioning that into contours, loading that into Rhino, baking a mesh using a Grasshopper script, and then taking that mesh, putting that into applying a Google Earth texture of the same area, perhaps in Rhino, and then you're able to load that giant mesh into, if you're using Twinmotion, into there, and also into Archicad. So you can generate low poly versions of that topography, or like I've shown here, get huge versions of the distant mountains. And even then, you're always doing a little bit of approximation to fudge it and make it work. But as long as it looks like when you're in the site and it's looking appropriate, that's really where I stop worrying about whether the mountain's in the exact right spot, as long as it looks good from where you're standing.
And another great little secret is Blender and OSM. and that's one that you can pull some great data. Same thing, all topography, and you can also rip the city data, the massing from there, and you get the streets, railroads, etc. You can do some great stuff with it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Any other questions that are jumping out we haven't gotten to yet? I think I see one about the TM cloud. Sam, if you might.
Yeah,
I'm
now trying to see where the TM cloud is. Oh, right here. Did you say will it be available with AC25, or is that a future thing? You were timeline for that. So the cloud is available now. So it's with the Twinmotion 2021. There is an early access period. So I'm not 100% sure what that means with like everyone's licenses. I know it kind of ranges from license to license. So it is available with the Twinmotion 2021. It has been changing a little bit with who has access. So I'm sorry, I don't have the latest information for you there.
We've used it.
Okay.
So you're able to make it work, but like you were saying, I get the sense it's a little bit still in beta, and they're figuring out all the little bits of it. But
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then for the AC25 and whether or not the plugin for that, I can't give you an exact date, but I would see just check in a week or so, or maybe even sooner, that you'll be able to get that information from. You can look on the Unreal plugins page, so that's where it's going to have the latest one.
Sam, and what are your thoughts on Epic Games and Twinmotion's ambitions for multiplayer? Collaborative editing, collaborative design, collaborative presentation. What are your thoughts on where that's going?
Yeah, so the collaborative aspect is definitely possible in Unreal right now. So it's interesting because it's kind of, we're trying to decide, how do we keep Twinmotion lightweight and intuitive, and which aspects do we bring into Twinmotion? So that's one that is definitely in Unreal right now. However, I think there are some aspects that we are bringing to the cloud. So being able to have multiple people inside like a presentation file, and being able to mark up, talk, all watch the file together. So I think the collaborative aspect will first go with the cloud, and then I think from there it might start to trickle into Twinmotion. But for now, it's definitely only possible in Unreal at the moment.
That's right. Here we have a question from Giselle, and you'll see it there at the bottom. So this is for you, Sam.
Yes. Okay, yeah, awesome. I'm super happy to hear this. So there's a couple different places. There is the Unreal Online Learning Portal, which I can send some of the links here in a moment. But that is kind of a more long form courses that you can take. So there's a few up there on there where it's going to be like, if you're a beginner, here's how you get started and do all your lighting, bring in assets to get you to the end. And then we also have the Unreal and Twinmotion YouTube pages. So there we're constantly putting up tips and tricks and tutorial videos. So I'll link to those two things into the chat, but those are going to be your best bet. And yeah, hopefully that answers your question a little bit. I can try to pull those up.
I'd also say the Twinmotion official community Facebook group is a great wealth of knowledge, where there's actually a lot of people who are new to Twinmotion, and there's a lot of friendly people who will give you sometimes unwanted criticism, but they're always willing for the tips and tricks. And just a few, like 3 quick tips about configuration of lighting. I would say that the new Twinmotion has an area lighting tool, which makes it super easy, where you're not placing one light, but you're lighting each room as a rectangle, and it will automatically, calculate how much light you need in there. And I think really just trying out things. I don't think there's a prescribed way of adding this exact light model and turning it to this temperature. It's learning what effect you're looking for, and just playing around a little bit with what combination of drop lights and area lights are going to get you to your desired final outcome.
I agree with that. I think that is very spot on. That's good advice. I'm sending a few links here in the chat. And then I saw a question about phasing, I believe, earlier. Let me try to figure or reread the question.
538. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm like, okay. Can you elaborate on the phasing portion in Twinmotion and how that happens? So the phasing that I was talking about was in Twinmotion, which I can showcase. Matt, do you do any phasing in Archicad?
A little bit. We do a few renovation projects, but it sounds like they're excited about the phasing in Twinmotion and whether you need to build that in from your initial Archicad import, which my understanding is not, that whatever Archicad model you send in, you can completely control the phasing separately in Twinmotion.
I don't think that's linked from Archicad, but yeah, Archicad, you can certainly do it with layers and other means to control phasing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And I know we're getting close to time, so I'll just kind of quickly show this. But yeah, you can set it all up in Twinmotion. So it's going to be underneath the media tab on the bottom left-hand side. And then under phasing, you'll see that there's one here that has phasing. So if I were to, you'll see that they're all turned off. And when I go through the phases here, it starts to bring in all of the geometry. And so this is being done. So you can kind of, put the dates on there. It doesn't have to be dates. You can use this for design options as well. But it's just, honestly, it's turning stuff off and on. So if I were to create a new phase and turn like some of these trees off, it will remember that, and then when I go over to that phase, it will turn it off. I think it's getting confused because it's overlaying with this one, but that's how you set it up. So here you can see that it's turned off when I have it selected. So that's the setup that you can do there.
Sam,
sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Can the phasing be a link to layers? Because layers come in from Archicad, so therefore, could that be linked so that you're actually using the layers or object components like that?
Yes. So yeah, if you do your layers in Archicad, when you bring in your model from the very beginning, you'll want to do keep hierarchy, which is one of the import options that you have. So the other one will get all your materials and put them together. But if your layers are created with materials, then that's fine as well. But yeah, if you have your layers set up in Archicad, you can come over here and then set it up, turn the phasing off and on for layers as well.
One more I'm seeing from Jackie. Can your lighting plan remain in 2D form in Archicad and then do all the rendering aspects in Twinmotion? Or do you need to use the Archicad light tools? You don't. You can send in a completely blank wall and roof in Archicad and light it to your heart's desire in Twinmotion with whatever you'd like. They don't have to be associated with Archicad lighting elements. However, we always try to advance our Archicad model to the greatest level of detail. So if you can pop in a can light in your Archicad model, it's definitely going to help you when you're coming to Twinmotion and have to figure out what areas of the wall might be lit up if it's an art wall or where fixtures might be located. So they're not connected, but it's in your best interest to model as much in Archicad as you can in order to have a more detailed and lifelike Twinmotion model in the end. And I would also say your specific question about lighting plan remaining in 2D is it can certainly remain in 2D, but most of the time, if you're using a smart BIM object, it'll be a 2D, let's say for the same example, it'll be a can light object that is a 3D can light, but in 2D, it shows up as whatever symbol you would prefer to show on your reflected ceiling plans. So don't need to show it in 3D. You can only show it in 2D if you want, or you can, best option is probably do both and in Twinmotion.
That's perfect. Well, I think it's best to end the series on a question. And I think that question should be, where do we think the future of our industry is going to be in the next 5 years? What do we think is going to happen? And so let's start with Samantha, and we'll go to Matt, Thomas, and we'll go to
okay. that is interesting. So there is a lot of talk about metaverse, and so I think that it's going to continue to go that direction. So kind of blending industries of architecture, automotive, fashion. I think there's going to be a blend between some of those that creating stuff in 3D is going to be much more easier for anyone to do. So kind of like Matt had referred to, is you kind of had to, back in the day, you had to be a guru and spend a lot of time learning how to do this one software that you use only during competitions or or something like that. So I think it's going to be much more accessible to people. A lot more people are going to be able to create stuff in 3D, and there's going to start to be a blend of, like I said, I think fashion, architecture, automotive, all these things are going to kind of blend together a little bit in my mind. But I leave it with that. So pass it on to the next person.
Perfect. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. What was your original question? I got excited thinking about it. And
Where do you think? Okay, we saw where 10 years have gone. Where do you think the next 5 will take us?
I think with the whole work from home surge, I think we're going to be logging into a virtual office from home. You're going to have your 3D model on your virtual desk. Someone's going to be able to walk over from their house, look at your model. Maybe they'll leave you some notes on your virtual desk. And we're going to be, I think, really getting, not necessarily working from home, but merging both. My meetings in the office used to be everyone just gathers around my computer and points over my shoulder. So why can't we do that in VR? But I think, blending what we're doing in the virtual world, how that translates to the real life, not just for collaboration, but how we're constructing it in real life is something that I'm super excited for. And Kate can't wait up for the 2025 Design Tech Meetup.
Perfect. Go ahead, Thomas.
All right, well, I'll finish it up. I think, one of the things that we're going to see more of is digital twins. There's a real movement right now to create, the digital version, right, of buildings, and to have that available to everybody to be able to, whether you're walking through it, whether you're using it for reference for new construction, whatever it's for. But that's I think going to keep moving more and more forward. But that's also going to lead to the ability to interface better, right, with the existing buildings where you're doing work, and provide more real-time type of visualization, real-time design, real-time workload. I think that's what we're seeing in Twinmotion, which is an amazing program that really makes it simple. It makes it easy. And I think we're going to see much more movement toward that of simplification of software, and simplification of processes, because we're all overwhelmed by technology. And I think there's a real need for move in that direction.
That's perfect. And, I think what we've saw since we've graduated and worked in the field is we're becoming storytellers. And that's what Twinmotion and Unreal and all these tools are letting us become. And, as they automate the working drawing process, I think we'll get to let go of symbols and lines, and we'll finally get to start to tell stories with architecture. And I think ultimately with that, we'll create the best architecture we can, because we stop focusing on technical requirements, and we're focused on the art of how people move through the buildings. So I think that's where we're going. And
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, architects are all artists, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's all symbols. And so with that, anybody in the audience want to blurt out any other thoughts? I'll give you a couple seconds. If not, hold your ideas and your thoughts. And I think this has been a fabulous Design Tech Meetup. And Samantha, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Thomas, and anybody else in the crowd, you got something to say it now. I'll give you a couple seconds. All right. Okay. I think that's it. Well, hey, thank you guys. This is fabulous. Great to meet you all. Great to meet you, Samantha, Matthew, Thomas. Great as always. And that's it. All right. On to the next one.
That's right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You bet.